Have you ever wondered about the nature of God, the Creator? How can we understand His attributes without falling into the trap of comparing Him to His creation? The family of the Prophet offered a profound insight. They taught that God's attributes are not separate from His essence. He is knowledge, He is power, He is sight. He knew, saw, and heard Himself even before there was anything else to be known, seen, or heard. When He brought creation into existence, His eternal knowledge then related to the things known, His hearing to things heard, and His sight to things seen. This view maintains the absolute oneness and eternity of God. It avoids the logical problem of having multiple eternal things like separate attributes of knowledge or power existing. Alongside God, it also avoids the idea that God somehow gained these attributes later, which would imply a time when He was not all-knowing or all-powerful. This is the core belief that preserves the pure concept of divine unity. Now, how does God communicate His will to us? Through the Holy Quran, this divine book isn't just a simple set of rules. It's a multi-layered, dynamic guide for all of humanity. Imam Ali, the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet, gave a brilliant explanation of its depth. He explained that the Quran contains descriptions of what is permitted and what is forbidden. A clear example is trade. Allah has made trade lawful, but He has forbidden interest or usury. This distinction is crucial for building a just and fair economic system. The Quran guides us in our financial dealings, ensuring they are ethical and free from exploitation. The Quran also distinguishes between acts that are obligatory and those that are recommended or optional. Take prayer, for instance. The 5 daily prayers are a pillar of Islam, an absolute obligation, but the Quran also encourages us to remember God in other ways, saying, "Remember Allah standing and sitting and reclining." These additional acts of remembrance are optional but highly rewarded, allowing us to stay connected to our Creator throughout the day. This structure provides a foundation of required duties while leaving ample room for personal spiritual growth. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Quran is the concept of repealing and repealed verses, known as naskh. This shows the divine wisdom in revealing guidance gradually. For example, an earlier verse might have set the waiting period for a widow at 1 year. Later, a new verse was revealed, changing this period to 4 months and 10 days. This doesn't mean the Quran contradicts itself. Rather, it demonstrates God's mercy in tailoring His laws to the developing needs of the community, making the final ruling the one that is to be followed. The Quran is also a book of context and exceptions. While certain things are forbidden, there are situations of dire necessity where the rules are relaxed. The verse, "Whoever is compelled without being willfully wrongful or transgressing commits no sin," is a perfect example. This shows that the faith is not meant to be a burden. It is a path of mercy, understanding that human beings may face extreme circumstances. It balances divine law with compassion for the human condition. The Quran also contains injunctions that are general and others that are specific. A particular or specific injunction might sound general but apply to a specific group or time. For instance, when God told the children of Israel, "I have made you superior to other nations of the world," the phrase nations of the world referred to the other nations of that particular era. On the other hand, a general injunction is truly universal and extensive in its meaning. When the Quran states that Allah has knowledge of everything, this is an absolute, all-encompassing truth with no limitations. Understanding the difference between general and specific verses is key to interpreting the Quran correctly and avoiding misapplication of its teachings. The Quran is also rich with lessons and parables to help us understand deep spiritual truths. It tells us stories of past nations, like the people of Pharaoh, to serve as a lesson for those who fear God. These stories aren't just historical accounts. They are timeless warnings and sources of guidance. The Quran also uses powerful illustrations. For example, it compares spending in the way of God to a single grain of seed that grows into 7 ears, with each ear bearing 100 grains. This beautiful imagery helps us visualize the immense rewards of charity and generosity, encouraging us to give freely. The language of the Quran itself has different levels of clarity. Some verses are crystal clear, their meaning immediately apparent, like "Verily Allah has power over everything." There's no ambiguity there. However, Other verses are more obscure or metaphorical, their meanings layered and profound. For example, the verse "the most merciful established himself upon the throne" is not meant to be taken literally, as if God is physically sitting. Instead, it's a powerful metaphor for his absolute authority and control over all of creation. These verses invite us to reflect more deeply and seek knowledge. The Quran also gives us brief commands and profound statements. A brief command might be establish prayer. It's simple, direct, and clear. Then there are verses whose full meaning is known only to God and those deeply rooted in knowledge. This humility is built into the Quran itself, reminding us that no matter how much we learn, our knowledge is finite compared to the infinite wisdom of the Creator. Imam Ali further clarified that some knowledge in the Quran is essential for every believer to know, such as the declaration of faith, "Know that there is no God but Allah." This is the foundation. Other things, like the mysterious letters that open some chapters, such as Alif, Lam, Mim, are not necessary for the average person's salvation. Their deeper meaning is left to God and the learned. The Quran's laws also interact with the actions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Some Quranic injunctions were later modified by the Prophet's practice, which was also divinely guided. For example, an early verse regarding the punishment for adultery was later specified and detailed through the Prophet's teachings, differentiating between various circumstances. Conversely, some of the Prophet's practices were superseded by a new Quranic revelation. For a time, Muslims prayed facing Jerusalem. Then the command came in the Quran, "Turn your face towards the sacred mosque in Mecca." This established the new permanent direction of prayer for all Muslims. This dynamic interplay shows that both the Quran and the Prophet's guidance are sources of legislation, working together to complete the faith. The Quran also contains commands that are obligatory only at specific times. The call to hasten towards the remembrance of Allah on Friday is a specific obligation for the congregational Friday prayer. Outside of that specific time, the obligation doesn't apply in the same way. This shows how the Quran structures our time and gives special significance to certain days and moments. Furthermore, the Quran differentiates between different levels of prohibition. There are major sins and minor sins. Willfully taking a life is a grave sin with a severe penalty mentioned in the Quran. On the other hand, something like lowering your gaze, while a command to maintain modesty, is not on the same level of severity. This nuanced approach helps us prioritize our actions and focus on avoiding the most serious offenses while striving for overall righteousness. Finally, the Quran includes injunctions where a minimum action is sufficient, but there is always room to do more. The verse recite then, "Whatever is easy for you" of the Quran is a perfect example. It shows mercy, recognizing that people have different abilities. Some may be sick, traveling, or busy, so a little recitation is enough. But for those who are able, there is no limit to the good they can do by reciting more. It encourages us to do our best within our capacity. From understanding God's eternal attributes to navigating the intricate and merciful guidance of the Quran, we see a faith built on pure monotheism, deep wisdom, and profound compassion. It is a complete guide for life, addressing our spiritual, social, and personal needs with divine precision. Thank you for watching. If you found this reflection helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that delves into the heart of faith. See you in the next video.